guys, and welcome back to another installment of MTG with Luke G. I'm your host, Luke G, and this week we're going to be looking at building a competitive MTG deck, and this is part 1. Part 2 I'm going to put up really quickly in probably just the next few days because I really want to get these videos out there. What we're going to look at in this video is some terms you're going to need to know, a helpful website that I've used for many years now, and other tricks and tips you're going to need to know before you start part 2. There are a lot of things you need to know, like if I were to make a rogue deck, just a deck that is completely out of cards that not a lot of people use, is it going to be good enough in competitive play? Do I need to do some research first? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? Well, we're going to find that stuff out first, because you can't just go into your big pile of magic cards and build a deck. It doesn't work exactly like that. Not unless you want to win a lot. Anyways, we're going to find out how that's going, and it's going on right now. The first term we need to look at is the most important word that you need to know in all of Magic the Gathering, and that is metagame. Now, what does metagame mean? Metagame is the word used to describe the popular competitive decks in your area at that given time. And what that means is, if you go to a Magic shop, what are you going to see? What's going to be there? And why does that matter? Well, it does matter a lot, because when you go there, a lot of decks counter a lot of other decks. Think of it as like rock, paper, scissors type thing. Now, there are two very important ways to determine what your metagame is. The first way is very simple. Go to the tournaments, watch the best players play, see what kind of decks they're using. When you see the decks that they're using them for a reason. They're very good players, so they know which decks are the best decks out there. Now, I'm not saying copy their decks or anything like that. You can make decks similar to them and make little subtle twinks that might beat their decks, or you might make a deck that's like the complete opposite of it that'll beat that deck. But you want to base the way that you make your decks around what your metagame is. The second one is to go to magic.tcgplayer.com. I've used this website for the longest time ever. It didn't used to be called that. It used to be called brainburst.com, and if you type that in, it still works, and it takes you to the same website. I went ahead and took a screenshot of the website for you so you can see just how to get to where I'm talking about. Right at the top where you can see those red boxes up there, you click on decks, then go down to standard or modern or whatever you want to look for. In this case, I did standard. And when you look at standard, you can see all the decks are shown right there. How many Mage Blades there are, how many Haunted Humans there are. So you can see the most popular deck right now in competitive gameplay is Mage Blade. And you gotta say to yourself, why is it so popular? Like, why am I just gonna build some completely random deck without even seeing why this is so popular? What if it's unstoppable? What if I can't beat it? Then why would you play any other deck, right? Or at least look at it. And the best thing for when you're looking at the best deck on the websites is the old saying, if you can't beat it, join it. Now, what you want to do first off, you don't want to just copy all of these decks. You want to try and make your own versions of the decks that will beat these decks. And if you can't beat them, eventually, yeah, you might need to join them. Because there's only certain ways to make these decks sometimes, like Affinity back in the day. You could pretty much only make it one certain way, and it would win and dominate like crazy. Blue-Green Madness was the same way too. Psychotog deck. A lot of those decks were very cookie cutter. It's the only way you can make them. After you click, say you want to look at Mage Blade, you click it, it shows you all 22 of those decks, what places they finished in, and usually they calculate like the top 8 places for all of these. So you can see at the very bottom there that Green-White Wolf Run only has 2 top 8 places. So it might not be something you want to look at. The first term I want to show you is the word playset. Now, you might have heard of this before, and if you have heard of this before, then good for you. But playset, all that means is 4 or the maximum you can use in your deck of a card. In this case, we're looking at Snapcaster Mage, and I did look at one of those Mage Blade decks just so you could see what I'm talking about. As you can see, Snapcaster Mage, obviously in this deck, it's almost named after him, is a very huge part of this deck. Now, that means you need to have 4 of them. He only costs 2 mana, so you need to have 4 of them. It's something that a playset is something, when you put a playset in your deck, it's pretty much saying, okay, I'm going to play a playset of these because I have to have them. If I don't draw these, I'm probably going to lose the game. And a lot of times you put cards in your deck like draw cards or card filtering cards in your deck like lands and stuff like that. That will help you get to these cards quicker. But you still need to have 4 of them, especially if they only cost 2 mana. Now the first one I want to look at here is Rogue Deck, and I'm not talking about World of Warcraft. What it means is Rogue Decks are decks that you see that no one saw coming. Very rare do these decks place high in competitive tournaments. Rogue decks are decks that use cards that most decks don't use. It doesn't mean that they're bad, but they just aren't as popular, and many players don't play them because they feel that it wouldn't work very well in their metagame. Most Magic the Gathering players will play these decks. And when I say most Magic the Gathering players, I mean like most players are just starting out. It's always great. Like I've made tons of rogue decks back in the day. It's always nice to dream and think that you could just like come up with a deck that nobody else thought of and just beat everybody else out. But the reason why that the pro players and all those players are playing the decks that are on those websites right now is because those are the best decks. They've tried these combinations. Every combination you can think of, they've tried. Now the next term I want to talk about is combo decks. And they're not like the edible treat down there. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the 2 cards on the top left there. You can see they work together. They make an infinite combo that just dominates and wins the game for you. There have been many of those combos throughout Magic the Gathering, and sometimes it's not just 2 cards, sometimes it's 3 cards or 4 cards or even more that make up your combo, and then you make your deck around those. Now combo decks are exactly that. A deck that uses a combo trick to win the game for you and is your win condition. These decks are often control decks, so that they can hold you off from winning long enough so that they can pull their combo off. Many times a combo would be 2 or more cards that will work perfectly together to win you the game. Combo decks are also not as popular in competitive play for the sheer fact that if you see one, the best way to beat it is just work around their combo. If you're playing a control deck and you go against a combo deck, the best way to beat it is just to counter or destroy their creatures that go into their combo. Like in this situation here, you have the Deceiver Exarch. If you kill him early game before he draws Splinter Twin, or you counter Splinter Twin, or you counter Deceiver Exarch, it's going to really mess up their combo. And once they run out of those combo choices, they're going to lose the game because they have no other way of winning. That's not my favorite kind of way of playing because I don't like to just have one way of winning. The next type of deck I want to talk about are control decks. As you can see right here, just from some of the pictures, we want to read some of these cards as I'm talking. Control decks are exactly what they sound like. A control deck duty is to control the game throughout the whole entire match. If it doesn't do that, then it's not a control deck. These decks are very popular and come in many variations. Most often a control deck will control gameplay by playing many counterspell cards, destruction cards like you see on the left there. The job of a control deck is to control gameplay until you either slowly win with your win conditions by eating at their health with small creatures, or pulling off like a mini combo or something like that to finish them off. I've played a lot of control decks, and they aren't my favorite kind of deck, but they do win quite often. They're very popularly played. And finally, the last term I want to look at are aggro decks. Aggro decks are my favorite type of deck to play. The job of an aggro deck is to quickly put pressure on your opponent, forcing them to make play mistakes and speed the overall gameplay up of your deck so they have to keep up with you. If they're playing a slow deck that's not very good and you're playing a very fast deck, they need to speed up their gameplay to really keep up with you. The only downside of an aggro deck is that if you take too long to kill your opponent, most often you'll run out of steam. And all that means is when you don't have any creatures or artifacts or anything like that in play, except for your lands of course, and you don't have any cards in your hand, and you don't really have a way of drawing cards other than just like every turn you get to draw a card, that's called running out of steam. Then all you're going to be doing is playing like one creature per turn, and any deck can deal with that. So that's usually an aggro deck needs to win by turn 5 through 7 in most cases. There have been decks back in the day like Sly that could win on like turn 2 or 3. I played Blue-Green Madness before. I'd usually win on turn 4, Blue-Green Madness. And that's the deck that I took to regionals. It was an aggro deck. It was Blue-Green Madness. And I played against 800 players and I came top 16. I lost one time and drew one time. And I just love aggro decks, and they're really good, but I don't think that they're the best. I mean, any dog has its day. to rock, paper, scissors effects. Certain decks can beat certain decks. Control decks can beat combo decks. Aggro decks can beat control decks a lot. It goes around in a vicious circle. Now, before you get to the next video, I want you to keep all those terms in notice, because like if you think, well, I'm more of a control player, I like to control the gameplay, slow it down, and win slowly, then you want to play a control deck. If you're the type of player that likes to play fast and play creatures really fast and go, 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 okay, land this, land this, land this, go, 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 then you're that type of player. You have to find out what type of player you are first before you decide what kind of deck you're going to play, because that way it works best with your gameplay. And if your style works really well with it, and you're in sync with your deck, you'll have a better chance of winning. Tune in for my next video, guys. I'm going to post it as soon as possible, and we're actually going to go through a deck together and explain why they played those cards and everything like that. And that way you can kind of look at your own cards, and I'll give you some more tips and tricks in that video too. Well, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.